There was a time when marriage vows meant something sacred. But what happened on Family Feud that warm afternoon in April 2024 would remind everyone watching why honesty still matters. When a wife's innocent answer revealed her husband's darkest secret, even Harvey couldn't find words. What unfolded next proved that sometimes the truth has a way of surfacing exactly when it needs to. Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to never miss these jaw-dropping Family Feud moments. Marcus and Jennifer Williams stood side by side at the Family Feud podium, looking like the picture-perfect American couple. Marcus, at 52 years old, was a successful corporate attorney in Atlanta, always impeccably dressed in his tailored suits. Jennifer, 48, worked as a nurse at the local children's hospital, her warm smile and kind eyes reflecting the compassion that made her beloved by her patients and their families. They had been married for 23 years, and from the outside, their life seemed ideal. The Williams family had traveled from Atlanta with their 3 adult children and Marcus's younger sister to compete on Family Feud. It was supposed to be a celebration, a fun family adventure to mark their upcoming 24th wedding anniversary. Jennifer had been so excited when they got selected, telling everyone at the hospital that this was going to be their special memory together. She had even bought a new outfit for the occasion, an elegant navy blue dress that Marcus had complimented when she showed it to him. Marcus had been less enthusiastic initially. He was the type of man who was always working, always busy with cases and client meetings. His phone seemed permanently attached to his hand, and he had nearly backed out of the Family Feud taping twice, citing urgent work matters. But Jennifer had insisted. For years, she had felt like she was competing with his career for his attention. This show was supposed to be about them, about their family, about remembering what mattered most. What Jennifer didn't know was that for the past 8 months, Marcus had been having an affair with a paralegal at his firm. The late nights he claimed were for preparing cases had been spent at a downtown apartment. The business trips he took had included romantic weekends. The distraction she attributed to work stress was actually guilt eating away at him. Marcus had become a master at compartmentalizing, keeping his 2 lives carefully separated. But secrets have a way of surfacing when you least expect them. Harvey had welcomed the Williams family onto the stage with his usual warmth and humor. The family seemed fun and engaged, winning the first few rounds against their opponents, the Rodriguez family from Texas. The energy was good, the audience was enjoying the competition, and everything seemed routine. Steve had no reason to suspect that in just a few minutes, this would become one of the most talked-about episodes in Family Feud history. The Williams family had been doing well throughout the game. Their teamwork was solid, and they had accumulated a strong lead going into the final rounds. Marcus had been particularly impressive, answering several questions correctly with the confidence that came from years of thinking on his feet in courtrooms. Jennifer had been supportive, cheering for each family member, proud of how they were representing themselves on national television. Then came the question that would change everything. Steve read from his card with his characteristic energy. The survey says we asked 100 married people to name something your spouse does that makes you suspicious they might be cheating. It was meant to be a lighthearted question, the kind that usually generated funny, relatable answers about checking phones or working late. The kind of question that made audiences laugh and contestants groan good-naturedly about the quirks of married life. Jennifer was up first for her family. She stepped to the podium with a smile, clearly relaxed and enjoying the experience. Steve repeated the question, adding his usual commentary. Name something your spouse does that makes you suspicious they might be cheating. Jennifer barely hesitated. She leaned into the microphone and said clearly, suddenly starts going to the gym and loses weight. The audience laughed and applauded. It was a good answer, the kind born from common sense and everyday observation. Steve nodded approvingly. Good answer, good answer. The board revealed that it was indeed the number 2 answer on the survey. The Williams family celebrated with high fives. Marcus clapped along, but something had shifted in his expression. He had lost 15 pounds in the past 3 months, claiming he just wanted to get healthier. The paralegal he was seeing worked out regularly, and he had started going to her gym. Jennifer thought it was wonderful that he was taking care of himself. She had no idea. The game continued. The Rodriguez family gave their answers, and control went back and forth. But as the round progressed, something interesting started happening. Each time the question came around to a Williams family member, they would give another answer that hit increasingly close to home. Marcus's sister said starts dressing nicer and wearing cologne. Number 4 answer on the board. Their oldest son said works late more often than usual. Number 1 answer. Their daughter said acts distant and distracted. Number 3 answer. With each answer, Marcus's discomfort grew more visible. He was shifting his weight from foot to foot, adjusting his tie, looking anywhere but at the board or at Jennifer. The audience, caught up in the game, didn't notice. Steve Harvey, always perceptive about his contestants, caught something in Marcus's body language but assumed it was just typical game show nerves. Then it was Jennifer's turn again. The Williams family needed just one more answer to win the round and move on to fast money. Steve approached Jennifer with the question one more time. We need one more answer, Jennifer. Name something your spouse does that makes you suspicious they might be cheating. Jennifer paused this time, thinking more carefully. The smile on her face faded slightly as she actually considered the question beyond the game show context. And then, without thinking about the implications, she leaned into the microphone and said, guards their phone like their life depends on it and changes the password. The audience applauded, expecting this to be another good answer. Steve said, guards their phone, changes the password. Survey says, the board revealed it was the number 5 answer, worth 8 points. The Williams family erupted in celebration. They had won the round and would advance to fast money. Everyone was happy, jumping and hugging each other. Everyone except Marcus. He stood frozen, his face drained of color. Because 3 weeks ago, he had changed his phone password. Jennifer had asked about it casually one morning when she needed to check something on his phone while hers was charging. Marcus had brushed it off, saying his firm had implemented new security protocols for all attorneys. Jennifer had accepted this explanation without question, trusting her husband completely. Steve Harvey noticed Marcus's reaction and, with his years of hosting experience, sensed something was off. But the show had to continue, so they moved forward to prepare for fast money. During the commercial break, Jennifer noticed her husband's unusual behavior. She approached him with concern. Honey, are you okay? You look pale. Marcus forced a smile. I'm fine, just nervous about fast money. But his hands were shaking, and he couldn't meet her eyes. Their daughter, Sarah, 21 years old and studying psychology at Emory University, was watching her father closely. She had noticed changes in him over the past several months. The distance, the distraction, the way he was always on his phone. She had mentioned it to her mother once, but Jennifer had defended Marcus, saying he was just stressed with work. Now, seeing his reaction to that innocent game show question, Sarah's instincts were screaming that something was terribly wrong. Fast money time arrived. The Williams family had decided that Jennifer and Marcus would play together, the married couple representing their family in the final round. It seemed romantic, symbolic of their partnership. Marcus went first, and despite his obvious nervousness, he managed to answer the 5 questions. He scored 118 points, a decent start that put Jennifer in a good position to win the $20,000. Jennifer took her position at the podium, confident and calm. She had no idea that the next few minutes would shatter everything she thought she knew about her marriage. Steve went through the questions quickly, and Jennifer answered each one with the thoughtful consideration that characterized her approach to everything in life. When Steve revealed her answers, she had scored 89 points, bringing their total to 207, well over the 200 needed to win. The family celebrated, hugging and jumping with joy. They had won the $20,000, but as the celebration died down and they prepared to leave the stage, something unexpected happened. Steve Harvey, who had been observing Marcus throughout the taping, made a decision that would change everything. Marcus, can I ask you something, man to man? Steve's tone was different now, more serious, almost concerned. Marcus nodded, though his discomfort was obvious to everyone watching. Steve Harvey had hosted thousands of episodes of Family Feud. He had developed an instinct about people, about when something was being left unsaid, about when the real story was bigger than the game being played. And right now, every instinct he had was telling him that Marcus Williams was carrying a secret that was eating him alive. When your wife gave that answer about guarding the phone and changing the password, you looked like you'd seen a ghost. Want to tell me why? The studio fell silent. The audience, which had been celebrating just moments before, sensed the shift in energy. Jennifer turned to look at her husband, confusion crossing her face. Marcus, what is he talking about? Marcus opened his mouth, but no words came out. His carefully constructed world, the one where he could be both the devoted husband and the unfaithful partner, was collapsing in real time on national television. The weight of his deception suddenly felt unbearable. Steve pressed gently but firmly. Brother, I've been doing this a long time. I know when someone is carrying something heavy, and you, my friend, are about to break under the weight of whatever you're holding. Now you can walk off this stage with that burden, or you can set it down right here, right now. But I'm telling you, secrets this big don't stay hidden forever. They either destroy you slowly or you face them head-on. Marcus's eyes filled with tears. His whole body seemed to sag as the facade he had been maintaining for months finally crumbled. He looked at Jennifer, at her confused, trusting face, and something inside him broke. He couldn't do this anymore. He couldn't keep lying to the woman who had stood by him for 23 years, who had supported every dream, who had given him 3 beautiful children, who deserved so much better than what he had become. Jennifer, Marcus said, his voice breaking. I need to tell you something. I should have told you months ago. He paused, struggling to get the words out. I've been unfaithful to you. I've been having an affair. The studio gasped collectively. This wasn't the usual Family Feud drama. This was real life, real pain, unfolding in front of hundreds of people, and soon to be millions watching at home. Jennifer staggered backward as if she had been physically struck. Her daughter, Sarah, immediately moved to support her, wrapping an arm around her mother's shoulders. Steve Harvey stood frozen, his expression showing that even he hadn't anticipated this level of revelation. He had pushed for honesty, but this was more than he had expected. The camera operators, the production crew, everyone involved in making the show suddenly found themselves documenting something far more significant than a game show win. They were witnessing a marriage crisis in real time. Jennifer's face cycled through emotions: shock, disbelief, pain, anger, and finally a devastating sadness that seemed to age her 10 years in 10 seconds. How long? Her voice was barely a whisper, but in the silent studio everyone heard it. Marcus couldn't look at her. 8 months. Jennifer's knees buckled and her children had to physically hold her up. 8 months, while she had been working double shifts at the hospital, while she had been planning their anniversary party, while she had been so proud of him and his success, he had been betraying her for 8 months. The audience didn't know how to react. Some people were crying, others sat in stunned silence. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was a family imploding, and they were witnessing it. Steve Harvey recovered his composure and did something that showed why he was more than just a game show host. He was a human being who understood that this moment required real compassion, not just showmanship. Marcus, Steve said quietly, I appreciate your honesty, brother. That took courage. But this is your wife, your family. This conversation needs to happen in private, not on this stage. He turned to the producers. Stop the cameras. The producers hesitated, knowing they had incredible footage, but Steve's authority was absolute. I said stop the cameras. This family needs privacy. Now, what happened next was never meant to be aired, but the story would eventually come out through interviews and Jennifer's own later testimony. The Williams family was taken to a private room. Steve Harvey joined them not as a host, but as someone who had been through his own marital struggles and understood the gravity of what was unfolding. He sat with the family for over an hour, not filming, not performing, just being present as a family tried to process devastating news. Jennifer's first question was the one every betrayed spouse asks. Who is she? Marcus, still unable to look at his wife directly, told her everything. The paralegal's name, how it had started, where they had been meeting. Each detail was like a knife to Jennifer's heart. Their children sat stunned, watching their father, the man they had admired and looked up to, reveal himself as someone they didn't recognize. But then came the questions that cut even deeper. Did you love her? Jennifer asked, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. Marcus finally looked at his wife, and his answer was perhaps the only honest thing he had said in months. No, I was flattered, I was stupid, I was selfish, but I never loved her. I love you. I've always loved you. That's what makes this so unforgivable. Jennifer's daughter Sarah spoke up then, her voice shaking with anger and pain. Mom has been working herself to exhaustion at the hospital. She's been covering extra shifts to help save for your anniversary trip. She's been planning this special celebration for months. And she couldn't even finish the sentence. The betrayal wasn't just against their mother. It was against all of them, against everything they had believed about their family. Steve Harvey let them talk, let them cry, let them express their pain and anger. He didn't try to fix anything or offer platitudes. He understood that some moments just needed to be witnessed, that sometimes the most helpful thing you could do was simply be present for someone's pain. When the rawest emotions had been expressed, when the initial shock had begun to settle into the reality of what would come next, Steve finally spoke. Jennifer, Steve said gently, I don't know if this means anything right now, but I've seen a lot of marriages in my years on this earth. I've seen them break and I've seen them heal. What happens next is entirely up to you and Marcus, but I want you to know that whatever you decide, you deserve respect, support, and time to figure out what's best for you and your children. Marcus, Steve continued, turning to the man who sat with his head in his hands, you made a terrible choice. But you also just made a brave one. Confessing publicly like this, that wasn't calculated or strategic. That was a man who couldn't carry the weight anymore. Now you have to face the consequences, but at least you've started with the truth. The conversation in that room lasted nearly 2 hours. When the Williams family finally emerged, they looked exhausted, emotionally drained, but somehow more real than when they had walked into the studio that morning. Jennifer had made a decision. She wasn't ready to make any permanent choices about her marriage, but she needed space. She would stay with her sister. Marcus would move out of their home temporarily. They would seek counseling, both individually and as a couple, and they would figure out if their marriage could survive this betrayal. Steve Harvey made his own decision. He gathered the production team and told them that the episode would not air as filmed. The confession, the family's pain, that was private, and it would remain private. The $20,000 the family had won would be donated to a marriage counseling charity in their name if they agreed. The Williams family accepted gratefully, saying they didn't feel right taking the money under these circumstances. What happened next was unexpected. News of what had occurred at the taping leaked within days, though not through official channels. Audience members who had been present told friends and family, and the story began to spread. But instead of becoming tabloid fodder, it sparked something different. It started a conversation about honesty, infidelity, and the pressure of maintaining perfect appearances in modern marriages. Jennifer Williams made the difficult decision to speak publicly about what had happened. She gave an interview to a major magazine 3 months after the taping, not for attention or sympathy, but because she wanted to share what she had learned. Her honesty was powerful. She talked about the shock of discovering her husband's betrayal on national television, about the humiliation of having her most private pain exposed publicly, about the journey she had been on since that day. "I was angry," Jennifer said in the interview, "not just at Marcus for cheating, but at myself for not seeing the signs. Looking back, they were all there. The phone guarding, the gym membership, the late nights, the distraction. I chose not to see them because I didn't want to believe my husband could do that to us. But the truth doesn't care what we want to believe." She continued with remarkable clarity. "That moment on Family Feud, as horrible as it was, might have saved our marriage. Not because the confession fixed anything, but because it forced us to stop pretending. Marcus couldn't keep living a double life, and I couldn't keep living in denial. The truth, as painful as it was, gave us a chance to actually deal with our problems." The interview went viral, not because people enjoyed the drama, but because Jennifer's perspective resonated with millions of people who had faced similar betrayals or who feared facing them. Her refusal to play the victim, her willingness to acknowledge her own role in missing the warning signs, and her honest struggle with forgiveness struck a chord. Marriage counselors reported that her interview had prompted hundreds of couples to finally have difficult conversations they had been avoiding. Marcus also spoke publicly, though more reluctantly. In his statement, he took full responsibility for his actions without making excuses. "I betrayed the best person I've ever known," he wrote. "I told myself lies about why it was okay, about how I was managing everything. The truth is, I was a coward. I was feeling old, feeling unappreciated at work, and instead of talking to my wife about it, I sought validation elsewhere. It was selfish, it was wrong, and there's no excuse for it." What made Marcus's statement remarkable was what came next. He didn't just apologize, he outlined the concrete steps he was taking. He had ended the affair immediately and completely. He had quit his job at the law firm, recognizing that staying there would make recovery impossible. He had entered individual therapy to understand why he had made these choices. He was attending a support group for people who had been unfaithful, learning about the patterns that led to infidelity and how to rebuild trust. Steve Harvey stayed in touch with the Williams family throughout their journey. It wasn't for a show or for publicity. It was because he genuinely cared about what happened to them. He had seen the worst moment of their marriage, and he felt a responsibility to support them through whatever came next. He would call Jennifer periodically to check in, never prying, just offering an ear if she needed to talk. He connected the family with therapists he trusted, people who specialized in rebuilding marriages after infidelity. The path forward was not easy. Jennifer and Marcus spent 6 months separated, each working on themselves individually. Jennifer had to process not just the betrayal itself, but the violation of having discovered it so publicly. She had to grieve the marriage she thought she had while deciding if she wanted to build a different kind of marriage with the same man. Marcus had to face the reality of who he had become and make fundamental changes in how he approached his life, his work, and his relationships. Their children struggled with their own feelings. They loved both parents but were angry at their father for hurting their mother and for shattering their image of what their family was. Sarah, the psychology student, found herself working through her own feelings about trust and relationships. Their son David, 25, had been planning his own wedding when the affair was revealed, and he had to confront his fears about whether lasting love was even possible. Their youngest, 19-year-old Emma, felt caught between wanting to support her mother and missing the relationship she had with her father. The turning point came 9 months after the Family Feud taping. Jennifer and Marcus had been in couples therapy for 3 months by then, slowly, painfully working through the wreckage of the affair. One session, their therapist asked Jennifer what she needed to feel safe with Marcus again. Jennifer's answer was simple but profound. I need to know that the man I fell in love with 25 years ago is still in there somewhere. Because the man who had the affair, I don't know him. I never married him. I can't be married to him. That statement became the foundation for their healing. Marcus realized that reconciliation wasn't about getting back to how things were. It was about becoming someone worthy of Jennifer's trust again, becoming the man he had been before fear and ego had led him astray. He threw himself into the work of transformation with the same intensity he had once applied to his legal cases. He attended therapy twice a week. He joined a men's group focused on accountability and integrity. He volunteered at a homeless shelter, doing work that had nothing to do with status or recognition. A year after the confession, Jennifer made a decision. She told Marcus she was willing to try rebuilding their marriage, not because she had forgotten what happened, but because she had seen genuine change in him. It wasn't the grand gestures or the apologies. It was the small, consistent changes. The way he now communicated about his feelings instead of shutting down. The way he made their marriage a priority instead of an afterthought. The way he had become transparent about everything, his phone always accessible, his schedule always shared, his whereabouts never a mystery. But Jennifer also set clear boundaries. They would renew their vows, but this time with promises they both truly understood the weight of. Marcus would continue therapy indefinitely. They would have regular, scheduled conversations about the state of their marriage, not waiting until problems festered. And if Marcus ever betrayed her trust again in any way, she would leave without hesitation. These weren't threats. They were the terms of a new relationship built on honesty rather than assumption. 2 years after that fateful Family Feud taping, Steve Harvey invited the Williams family back for a special segment. This time, it would air, but only with their full consent and participation. The segment was titled The Truth About Second Chances, and it became one of the most watched and discussed episodes in the show's history. Jennifer and Marcus sat together on the couch, and Steve asked them to share their journey. Jennifer spoke first, her words measured and thoughtful. That day on Family Feud was the worst day of my life. Finding out about the affair was devastating. Finding out on national television was humiliating. But looking back now, I can see that it might have been the day that saved our marriage. If Marcus had confessed privately, I don't think he would have fully grasped the weight of what he had done. The public nature of it, the fact that he couldn't take it back or spin it, forced him to confront the truth in a way that private confession might not have. Marcus's turn came, and he was visibly emotional. I destroyed the most precious thing in my life because I was too proud to admit I was struggling. The affair wasn't about love or attraction. It was about ego, about feeling important and desired at a time when I felt invisible at home and undervalued at work. But instead of talking to Jennifer about these feelings, I betrayed her. He paused, gathering himself. That moment on stage when I confessed, it felt like my life was ending. But it was actually the beginning of becoming the man I should have been all along. The truth set me free from the prison of lies I had built, even though that freedom came with consequences I deserved to face. Steve Harvey's commentary during this segment reflected his own growth from the experience. I pushed Marcus to tell the truth that day, he said. I knew something was wrong, and I thought bringing it to light would help. What I didn't fully understand was the pain that truth would cause or the long journey that would follow. But I learned something important. Truth alone doesn't heal. Truth is just the starting point. It's what you do after the truth comes out that determines whether healing happens. The segment included input from marriage counselors who worked with couples recovering from infidelity. They explained that while affairs are devastating, they don't have to be the end of a marriage. With genuine remorse, consistent action, professional help, and time, some couples emerge from infidelity with stronger, more honest relationships than they had before. But they also emphasized that forgiveness is a choice, not an obligation, and that choosing to leave a marriage after infidelity is equally valid. The impact of the Williams family's story extended far beyond their own healing. Marriage counselors across the country reported increased appointments in the weeks following the segment airing. Apparently, seeing a real couple work through real problems on television had given other couples permission to address their own issues. Churches and community organizations used the Williams family story as a starting point for discussions about marriage, honesty, and forgiveness. Jennifer became an unexpected advocate for betrayed spouses. She started speaking at marriage retreats and counseling conferences, sharing her story and encouraging others to seek help when relationships were struggling. Her message was balanced. She didn't glorify staying in a marriage after infidelity, nor did she judge those who chose to leave. Instead, she emphasized the importance of making informed, intentional choices rather than reactive ones. Whatever you decide, Jennifer would tell audiences, make sure it's what you truly want, not what you think you should do because of what others expect. Some marriages can heal after infidelity. Others can't and shouldn't. Only you know which one yours is, but give yourself time and support to make that decision from a place of clarity, not just pain. Her honesty and wisdom helped countless people navigate their own difficult situations. Marcus's journey was different but equally important. He became involved with organizations that helped men develop emotional intelligence and healthier relationship patterns. He spoke openly about the toxic masculinity and ego that had contributed to his affair, about the pressure men often felt to appear successful and unaffected by emotional struggles. His vulnerability in sharing his failures and growth helped other men recognize similar patterns in their own lives before they made irreversible mistakes. 3 years after the confession, the Williams family celebrated their 26th wedding anniversary. It was a small, private affair, nothing like the big party Jennifer had been planning before everything fell apart. But it was meaningful in ways the original celebration never could have been. Marcus had written new vows, simple and honest. I promise to choose you every day, not just in words but in actions. I promise to communicate when I'm struggling instead of seeking escape. I promise to earn your trust not just once but continuously, for as long as you'll let me. Jennifer's vows were equally powerful. I promise to trust my instincts and speak up when something feels wrong. I promise to expect honesty even when it's painful. I promise to choose myself and my well-being, knowing that a healthy me is necessary for a healthy us. And I promise that if you ever betray me again, I will have the strength to walk away, because I now know I can survive anything. Steve Harvey attended the renewal ceremony. In his toast, he reflected on what the Williams family had taught him. When I asked Marcus to tell the truth on that stage, I thought I was helping. What I didn't realize was that I was witnessing the beginning of one of the most courageous journeys I've ever seen. This family could have let shame and pain destroy them. Instead, they chose the harder path of honesty, accountability, and genuine change. The children's perspective added another layer to the story. Sarah, now a graduate student in marriage and family therapy, said that watching her parents work through the affair had actually taught her more about healthy relationships than their 23 years of apparent perfection had. I used to think a good marriage meant never having problems, she explained. Now I understand that a strong marriage is about how you handle problems when they arise. My parents' marriage isn't perfect, but it's real now in a way it never was before. The story took an interesting turn when a therapist who had been following the Williams family journey wrote an academic paper about public confession and accountability. The paper examined how the very public nature of Marcus's confession, while initially traumatic, had created a level of accountability that private confessions rarely achieve. When you confess on national television, the paper argued, you can't minimize, you can't rewrite the narrative later, and you can't pretend it didn't happen. That public commitment to truth had been a foundation for genuine change. 5 years after the confession, the Williams family participated in a documentary about modern marriage and infidelity. The documentary followed several couples at different stages of dealing with affairs, but the Williams family story was the throughline that connected them all. The documentary showed the reality of recovery from infidelity. It wasn't a straight line. There were setbacks, difficult days, moments when Jennifer questioned if she could truly forgive, moments when Marcus wondered if he was capable of being the person Jennifer deserved. But the documentary also showed the progress. It showed Marcus now working at a small community legal aid office, helping people who couldn't afford attorneys, finding purpose in service rather than status. It showed Jennifer, who had gone back to school to become a psychiatric nurse, inspired by her own therapy experience to help others with mental health struggles. It showed their children, now all thriving in their own lives, with a more realistic but also more resilient understanding of what relationships required. The documentary's most powerful moment came when Jennifer and Marcus were asked if they regretted how the truth came out. Marcus answered immediately, I regret the affair every day of my life. But I don't regret the public confession. If I had told Jennifer privately, I don't think I would have fully faced what I had done. The public nature of it made it impossible to minimize or rationalize. It forced me to take complete responsibility in a way that changed me fundamentally. Jennifer took longer to answer. Finally, she said, I used to think I regretted it. The humiliation was intense, but that public moment also brought us incredible support. People reached out from everywhere, sharing their own stories, offering advice and empathy. I realized we weren't alone in this struggle. That community of support helped me heal in ways that private suffering never could have. So no, I don't regret how it happened. I regret that it happened at all, but the way it came out might have been the only way we could truly heal from it. Steve Harvey's reflection in the documentary was equally meaningful. That day changed how I host Family Feud, he said. I used to think my job was entertainment, getting laughs, making good television. Now I understand that every person who stands on that stage has a story, has struggles, has secrets. I treat every contestant with more care now, more awareness that what seems like a simple game might be touching on something much deeper in their lives. The Williams family story became a case study in marriage therapy programs. Universities teaching psychology and counseling used it as an example of how crisis could become catalyst for change. The public nature of the confession, the family's willingness to share their struggle, and their emphasis on genuine transformation rather than quick fixes provided valuable lessons for both therapists and couples working through similar issues. 7 years after that Family Feud episode, the Williams family looked completely different than they had on that stage. Jennifer and Marcus were still together, but their marriage was unrecognizable from what it had been. They communicated openly about everything, no topic off limits. They went to therapy regularly, not just to fix problems, but to maintain the health of their relationship. They had rebuilt trust through thousands of small, consistent actions rather than grand gestures. More importantly, they had each become more complete individuals. Jennifer had discovered strength she didn't know she possessed. She had learned that she could survive the worst betrayal and come out stronger on the other side. She had found her voice and was using it to help others. Marcus had learned that vulnerability wasn't weakness and that true strength came from honesty, not from maintaining a perfect facade. He had found purpose in serving others rather than in accumulating status. Their children had also grown from the experience, though not in ways anyone would have chosen. They had learned that people could make terrible mistakes and still be worthy of love and forgiveness. They had learned that relationships required work, honesty, and constant choice. They had learned that perfection was an illusion, but growth and change were real possibilities. These lessons shaped how they approached their own relationships. The question of forgiveness came up often in interviews with the family. Jennifer was always honest about it. Forgiveness isn't a single moment, she would explain. It's not something I did one day and then it was finished. It's something I choose to do repeatedly on days when old pain resurfaces, on days when I remember what was lost. Some days forgiving is easy. Other days it's the hardest thing I do. But I keep choosing it because I've seen who Marcus has become, and that person deserves my forgiveness, even when the person he was doesn't. Marcus never took that forgiveness for granted. Years later, he still carried the weight of what he had done. But he had learned to channel that weight into motivation rather than letting it become destructive guilt. I can't change the past, he would say when speaking to groups of men about infidelity. I can't undo the pain I caused. But I can make sure that every day going forward, I honor the second chance I've been given. That's my responsibility, to be worthy of the forgiveness I've received. 10 years after the confession, the Williams family story had become part of the cultural conversation about marriage, infidelity, and redemption. The Family Feud moment, though never officially aired, had become legendary through word of mouth and media coverage. People debated whether Steve Harvey had done the right thing in pushing for the confession. Some argued it was an invasion of privacy. Others believed it was an act of compassion that had ultimately saved a family. Jennifer and Marcus themselves had complex feelings about it. They agreed that while the moment was painful beyond description, it had forced an honesty that might not have happened otherwise. Marcus believes he might have continued the affair if not for that public reckoning. Jennifer believes she might have accepted his eventual confession with less resolve to demand real change. The public nature of the crisis had created accountability that private confession might not have. Steve Harvey integrated the lesson from the Williams family into how he approached hosting. He became known for his ability to sense when contestants were carrying heavy burdens and for creating moments of genuine human connection on a show that was ostensibly just about gameplay. He often said that the Williams family had taught him that his platform was about more than entertainment. It was about creating space for truth, even when truth was uncomfortable. The final chapter in the Williams family story came a decade after the confession. Jennifer and Marcus, now in their late 50s, had become marriage mentors for their church. They worked with couples at all stages, from newlyweds to those on the brink of divorce. Their willingness to share their own story, complete with the messy, painful parts, made them uniquely effective. People trusted them because they had been through the worst and come out the other side. During a mentoring session with a young couple whose marriage was struggling after an affair, Jennifer shared what had become her core wisdom. People think trust is about believing your spouse would never hurt you. But real trust is knowing that if they do hurt you, both of you will have the courage to face it honestly. That's what Marcus and I rebuilt. Not the illusion of perfection, but the reality of two flawed people committed to growing together, no matter how painful that growth might be. Marcus's addition to these sessions was equally powerful. Before the affair, I thought being a good husband meant providing financially and showing up at family events. I didn't understand that emotional presence mattered more than any of that. I didn't know how to be vulnerable or how to ask for help when I was struggling. The affair happened because I didn't have the tools to handle normal life challenges in a healthy way. Rebuilding our marriage meant learning those tools, and that's work I'll be doing for the rest of my life. The documentary about their journey won awards and was used in counseling programs worldwide. But for the Williams family, the greatest achievement wasn't the public recognition. It was the private reality of their daily life. The Sunday morning coffee conversations where they checked in about their week. The date nights they never missed, prioritizing their connection above all else. The way they had learned to fight fairly, to apologize genuinely, to forgive repeatedly. Steve Harvey remained a friend to the family long after the cameras stopped rolling. He attended their children's weddings, celebrated their grandchildren's births, and continued to check in regularly. The relationship had evolved from host and contestant to genuine friendship. Steve would later say that the Williams family had given him one of the most important lessons of his career. That sometimes the most powerful thing television could do was tell the truth, even when that truth was uncomfortable, and that real human stories of struggle and redemption would always matter more than manufactured drama. The legacy of that Family Feud taping extended into unexpected areas. Family Feud itself began approaching the show with more awareness of the real lives behind the contestants. Other game shows took note, recognizing that the moments of genuine human connection were often more memorable than the biggest wins. Television in general saw a shift toward more authentic storytelling, with producers recognizing that audiences were hungry for real people dealing with real issues, not just curated perfection. For betrayed spouses everywhere, Jennifer Williams became a symbol of dignified strength. She hadn't immediately forgiven or immediately left. She had taken time to make a real choice about her future. She had demanded accountability and genuine change. She had maintained her own identity and worth throughout the process. And she had shown that there wasn't one right way to handle infidelity, only the way that was right for each individual situation. For unfaithful spouses, Marcus Williams offered a different kind of hope. Not the hope of easy forgiveness or quick redemption, but the hope that genuine change was possible. That you could face the worst thing you had ever done and use it as a catalyst to become a better person. That accountability didn't have to mean the end of everything, but it did require the end of who you had been and a commitment to becoming someone new. As this story draws to a close more than a decade after that fateful Family Feud taping, the Williams family continues to thrive. They have grandchildren now, and Jennifer and Marcus take great joy in being present, truly present, for these new generations. They tell their grandchildren age-appropriate versions of their story, emphasizing the lessons about honesty, accountability, forgiveness, and the power of choosing love even when it's hard. The game show moment that could have destroyed them had instead become the foundation for their strongest years together. They weren't naive anymore, believing that love alone could sustain a marriage. They knew it required work, communication, honesty, and continuous choice. But they also knew it was worth it. The marriage they had now, built on truth rather than assumption, tested by the worst and strengthened by the recovery, was more valuable than the seemingly perfect marriage they had lost. Steve Harvey reflected on the Williams family in multiple interviews over the years. Each time, his admiration for them grew. "That family taught me that my job isn't just to entertain," he would say. "It's to create moments of truth. Sometimes those moments are joyful, sometimes they're painful, but they're always real, and real is what people need." In a world full of filtered photos and curated lives, the Williams family showed us that truth, no matter how ugly, is the only foundation for genuine healing. The story of Marcus and Jennifer Williams, of a marriage nearly destroyed by betrayal and rebuilt through brutal honesty and consistent effort, continues to inspire and challenge people. It forces uncomfortable questions about our own relationships, our own honesty, our own capacity for forgiveness, or the wisdom to walk away when necessary. It reminds us that perfect marriages don't exist, but real marriages, marriages built on truth and sustained by choice, are possible even after the worst betrayals. When asked what advice they would give to couples facing similar situations, Jennifer and Marcus always emphasized the same points. Get professional help immediately. Don't make permanent decisions based on temporary emotions. Demand genuine accountability, not just apologies. Understand that healing takes years, not weeks. Be honest with yourself about what you can and can't accept. And know that whatever you decide, choosing your own well-being isn't selfish, it's necessary. The Family Feud episode where truth shattered illusion never officially aired, but its impact rippled outward in ways no one could have predicted. It changed how a game show host approached his work. It changed how a family understood love and commitment. It changed how thousands of viewers thought about their own relationships. And it proved that sometimes the most powerful moments aren't the ones we plan for, but the ones where truth breaks through our carefully constructed facades and forces us to face reality. Today, Jennifer and Marcus Williams continue their work with couples, their own story a testament to the possibility of redemption and the power of choosing truth over comfort. They don't claim to have all the answers, and they acknowledge that not every marriage can or should survive infidelity. But they stand as living proof that when two people commit to brutal honesty, consistent accountability, professional support, and genuine change, healing is possible even from the deepest wounds. The moment Harvey froze on that Family Feud stage, watching a wife's innocent answer expose her husband's affair, was the moment that changed everything. Not just for the Williams family, but for everyone who witnessed it, and for everyone who has heard their story since. It reminded us that truth matters, that accountability is necessary, that forgiveness is powerful but not mandatory, and that sometimes the worst moments of our lives can become the catalysts for our greatest growth. If this story moved you or taught you something valuable, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more incredible Family Feud moments that go beyond the game. The Williams family story continues to unfold, a living testament to the complexity of human relationships and the possibility of redemption. Their journey from that devastating public confession to a marriage stronger than before isn't a fairy tale with a perfect ending. It's a real story about real people who chose the hard path of honesty and transformation. And in a world that often values appearances over authenticity, their story stands as a powerful reminder that truth, no matter how painful, is always the foundation for genuine healing and lasting change.